At
Marriage is
19,
a
Clara
sacred
Mayfield
covenant,
learned the
not
hard
to be entered
way that
into
freedom
lightly.
was a luxury. The poor
Speak
could not
now if there
afford,
be
and the
any
dust
objection
choked.
to this union.
Town of Red Hollow. The wind there carried gossip faster than it carried rain. And by the time the church bells rang for her wedding, everyone already knew she hadn't said yes by choice. Her father's debts had grown like weeds after the drought. Her mother lay buried beneath a crooked cross. And the banker had made it clear, either Clara married Silas Crow, the richest cattle baron in 3 counties, or the Mayfield land would be stripped down to bones. Silas Crow was a name spoken in whispers. A man known for his steel-gray eyes, his endless acres, and a past soaked in rumors no one dared confirm. He was twice her age, broad-shouldered, quiet as a loaded gun, and had never been seen courting any woman. When his proposal came, it wasn't wrapped in flowers or promises, but in a contract slid across a table signed in bold ink. Clara cried that night until her throat burned raw, but by morning, survival won over hope. The town gathered like vultures dressed in their Sunday best. Women stared with pity and envy mixed together. Men muttered about luck and price. Clara walked the aisle in a borrowed dress, hands shaking, heart pounding so loudly she feared the preacher could hear it. She did not look at Silas until the vows forced her to. When she finally did, she expected coldness, but what she saw unsettled her more. There was no triumph in his eyes, only something heavy, something guarded. When the words "I do" left her lips, they felt like a surrender. The crowd exhaled as one, convinced the story was already written. A poor girl bought, a rich man satisfied. Life at Crow Ranch was not what Clara expected, but not in the way fairy tales lied. Silas did not touch her that first night, or the second. He gave her a room of her own, larger than the entire Mayfield house, and told her simply, "You're safe here." He left before dawn and returned after dark, never explaining himself, never demanding anything. The silence confused her more than cruelty would have. Town rumors, however, were merciless. They said she'd been bought to warm a cold bed. They said she'd cry herself to sleep on silk sheets. Clara held her head high whenever she rode into town beside Silas, even as whispers sliced at her spine. Days turned into weeks. Clara learned the ranch hands respected her, not because of her ring, but because Silas demanded it. He corrected men who spoke over her. He made it clear she was mistress of the house indeed, not name alone. Still, the distance between them remained, and Clara wondered if she was nothing more than a transaction he regretted. She never asked. Pride was the last thing she owned. Then came the announcement. 1 month after the wedding, Silas invited the entire town to the ranch. A belated wedding gift, the invitations read. Curiosity spread faster than wildfire. Red Hollow had never been invited to anything by Silas Crow. The night before the gathering, Clara finally confronted him. Her voice trembled as she asked what the gift was, for her or for the town that had sold her. Silas looked at her for a long moment before answering. "It's for the truth." Those words followed her into sleep like thunder, waiting to break. The day of the gathering, wagons lined the road to Crow Ranch like ants to sugar. The town arrived hungry for spectacle, convinced they would witness some grand display of wealth meant to flaunt. Clara's new cage. Silas stood beside her on the porch, dressed plainly, hat low, hands steady. Clara felt the weight of every eye, every judgment, every assumption pressing into her chest. When the crowd settled, Silas stepped forward and spoke, his voice carrying across the land like a verdict. He did not boast. He did not smile. He began with a confession. He told them about 10 years earlier, when the drought first hit, when Red Hollow's bank had seized land from widows, veterans, and farmers who had nowhere else to turn. He told them how he had bought those lands, not to profit, but to protect them from being sold to out-of-state men who would have driven families away forever. Murmurs spread, disbelief rippling through the crowd. Then Silas turned to Clara and placed a small wooden box in her hands. "This," he said, "is your wedding gift." Inside were deeds, dozens of them. Clara's breath caught as she read the names, families she knew, families who had vanished. Her own father's name sat among them. Silas raised his voice again. He announced that the land was being returned. Not sold, not leased. Given back, every acre, every home. The ranch would shrink, his fortune would halve, and Red Hollow would change forever. Silence fell so deep it felt sacred. The banker turned pale. The men who had laughed at Clara stared at the ground. Women wept openly. Then Silas said the words that shattered the town's last illusion. He admitted the marriage had been forced, but not by him. He named the threats, the pressure, the cruelty of men who treated a young woman like currency. He said he married Clara to stop it, to save her family's land, to give her legal protection no one could challenge. He never asked for love, only time. Clara felt the world tilt as understanding rushed in, fierce and overwhelming. The town had judged him a monster when he had carried their sins alone. Clara stepped forward then, her voice clear, unbroken. She told them she had not been silenced. She had been heard. That the gift was not money but dignity. The crowd stood frozen, ashamed, humbled. Red Hollow would never be the same. As people slowly dispersed, many bowed their heads to Silas, to Clara, to the truth they had refused to see. That night, as the sun bled into the horizon, Clara found Silas by the fence line. She thanked him, not as a debt, but as a choice. For the first time, he smiled. Not wide, not proud, just real. Their marriage had begun as a bargain. But in the quiet that followed truth, something stronger took root: respect, trust, and the possibility of love earned, not bought. And if this story moved you, if you believe truth still matters, and courage can change entire towns, subscribe to the channel. These are the stories history tried to bury, and we're here to tell them.